Today I am going to explain such a wonderful supernatural movie called The Vampire Assistant 2009. At the beginning of the movie we see the funeral of a boy named Darren. His parents and his friends are very saddened by his death. But Darren is alive inside the coffin and happily playing video games. He doesn't understand that his parents buried him in a coffin thinking he was dead. But why did this to him? To know this, we have to go back to some past events that happened to Darren, where we see Darren had a lot of happiness in his life. He was a very popular student in his school and passed every class with an A grade. Because of this, his parents also felt very proud of him. Darren also had a childhood friend named Steve. Being Darren's best friend is also a negative part of his life. One day Darren and Steve went to school, where Steve tells Darren to skip class, and they both went to the roof of the school. Steve starts breaking the school's light bulbs by throwing rocks, and challenges Darren to join him. Just then the history teacher saw Darren, and informed them at home about this. As a result, when Darren goes home, his parents threaten him and tell him to break the friendship with Steve. Because he is with Steve, he is becoming a bad student just like him. The next day, Darren tells Steve on his way to school, "My parents do not want me to be friends with you." Steve is very sad to hear this, and says we can keep friendship secretly. Darren also agrees. Just then, a strange car came in front of them, and a man inside the car throws a poster at them. Darren and Steve immediately picked up the poster and started reading. On the poster, they learned that there will be a circus event called Freak Show tonight in that city. They both planned to go to the circus. Darren then read the circus poster in the class. Just then his teacher saw the poster, and displayed the poster in front of all the students. He warns them that no one should go to see the circus, because everything in this circus exhibits illegal things. But Darren and Steve don't listen to the teacher. They sneak out of class and go to see the circus. Here we get to know that they are very fond of supernatural things. For example, Darren likes spiders a lot while Steve likes vampires. After a while they reach the circus and buy tickets to see the show, where a small man behind the box gives them a ticket. In fact, these people are assistants of vampires. Then they both enter the circus, where the circus host Mr. Tall comes on stage and calls Wolfman on stage. All the people were surprised to see him. Just then Mr. Tall pointed the Wolfman to a lady sitting in the audience. As a result, the wolf attacked the lady and bit her hand, breaking it. Seeing this, the people got more and more scared. But after a while the lady recovered her hand. Seeing this, everyone there was completely surprised. Where Mr. Tall tells the woman's name is Korma, and says she is one of our circus's members. Then the third person named Alexander entered the stage, whose body had no ribs. After Alexander leaves, a lady named Gertha comes on stage who has teeth like JCP's. She can break anything with his teeth. After Gertha comes a man named Ramesh. He has 2 stomachs. He can digest anything with the help of stomach. Then a beautiful lady named Madame Truska enters the stage. She calls Darren first and says, "I want you to be my assistant." Darren immediately agreed. But whenever Madame Truska touches her mouth, that's when he sees something strange happening in Darren's future. Seeing this, she was greatly frightened and his beard immediately grew out of his face. Then his beards are cut by magic power. All the people there enjoy a lot by watching this magic show. Madame Truska is so scared of Darren's future that she asks circus leader Ladern to stop the show. But Ladern comes on stage without listening to him, and begins his magic, where he brings a spider named Octa. Ladern played a whistle and the spider began to dance with him. Meanwhile, Steve recognizes Ladern as a vampire. Actually, he had read about Ladern in an old book. Steve then tells Darren that Ladern is a vampire and his real name is War. In the meantime, their school teacher came there with police forces and asked them to stop the magic show. Darren and Steve go backstage to hide from their teacher, where Darren took the opportunity to steal Octa from Ladern's room, because Steve liked Octa at first sight. As Darren tries to escape with Octa, just then he hears Ladern's voice. Darren immediately hides behind the door. Here Ladern comes into the room with an old man and talks to him about Vampanzi. Actually, Vampanzi is a more powerful vampire, those who kill people to eat blood. But Ladern is not that kind of vampire. He makes people unconscious and eats blood, not killing them. Then Steve comes into the room and tells Ladern, "I want to be a vampire." Steve was trying to convince them that he didn't like his normal life, because his parents died many years ago. Since then he is completely alone. After Steve requests them several times, Ladern agrees to make him a vampire. And Ladern first says about his blood test. When Ladern tests his blood, he realizes Steve is a bad boy. In fact, if he turned her into a vampire, she would be a very bad vampire, and start killing people. That's why Ladern doesn't want to make him a vampire. Hearing this, Steve gets very angry and leaves after abusing Ladern. Then Ladern learns that the Octa has been stolen. He immediately tries to find Octa. Darren saw this and ran through the stairs to the front of the road. Just then two people in the car there asked him to come in the car. And it was that car, the car that gave them the circus poster. Inside the car were two men named Merlot and Mr. Tiny. They interrogated Darren and found out they had kidnapped the wrong person. Actually, they are looking for Darren's friend Steve for an experiment. They then released Darren in front of his house without further torture. The next day Darren puts Octa in his bag and takes him to school, where Steve sees Octa and starts playing with him. Just then, the cage slipped from his grasp and fell to the ground.